Okay, so this is a sample I did of a double French bind, and you can see that this is the one that I did that helped me work out exactly how wide I needed to cut my bias for it to work. So I've cut 4.2 centimeters double, which means that it'll be folded over. So this is my strip. So it's folded over and it's stitched on double. It's turned under, and this inside edge here is actually a fold. And it just makes it a bit easier to deal with. So this is what you do if you were cutting, like if you're working with a chiffon or something like that. But really, this is the size of the sample that you have to do so that you can play with the binding and play with the width of it enough to work out exactly how wide you need to cut this. This is the calico is pretty stable, but if you were working with a chiffon or a crepe or something which has a lot more give in it, you might actually have to cut the bias up to, like, maybe 5 centimeters wide to take the stretch into account, because the more it stretches the thinner it gets, and the wider you need it obviously. So there's our finish. So again, we're stitching it in the ditch, so you really can't, you're not supposed to see the thread, but it's in black, and then on the inside you can see it's just caught the folded edge there. So we're going to start on the outside.
And you usually start at the underarm, don't you, Matt?
Yeah, exactly, starting at the underarm, good point. So the thing is with this, you need to calculate, when you're calculating the width, you need to calculate the seam allowance, and then you need to calculate what will fold over to go over the top of that seam allowance, and then how much you need in. So it's at least like 6 millimeters for the first one, maybe 7 for the next one, and maybe 8 millimeters for the third one. But just try and calculate it before you actually cut the strip. So I'm going to, with this one, I'm going to start a little bit away from the underarm because I want to sew the ends of the bias together. So I'm not going to start right at the underarm. And try and be really consistent with the widths that you're working with here, because if you're a millimeter out here, it can end up being 2 millimeters on the double, so it all adds up, so you can be a couple of millimeters out without really even trying. And I'm not really pulling on the fabric too much here. Obviously the more you pull on the fabric, the narrower you make the bind, and again, the more that throws out measurements. So I'm going to stop there, and now I'm going to just have a look. So there's the underarm there, so I'm just going to cut this off. So I'm going 1 centimeter past the underarm, and the same this way. So just fold that up. Centimeter there, and because I haven't gone too far in to the side seam, I should be able to fold these open and stitch down here. If you were to actually measure around the 6 millimeter seam allowance, potentially you could already have cut this to the right length and already have sewn this together, but you have to be pretty good with your measurements to be able to do that. Okay. Now we've got the seam allowance, side seam allowance folding back, and I think even though there's a lot of seam allowance there, I would still open up the seam on the bind rather than pushing it all towards the front, just to help average out that bulk a little bit. Okay, so there's my bias done. Now I'm going to take this to the iron and we're going to press all of this under nice and neatly. Okay, so I've got my double bias in place. I've stitched it on at foot width, and now I've given it a press. I've pressed it towards the armhole all the way around. Now to do the next bit of pressing, we actually if we do this way, you can see it, and you can see that if I fold this under where the fold goes against the raw edge of the bind there, and then I just give this a press. So press this all the way around. So I'll just give this a quick press now, and then I'll see you back at the machine. So this is my armhole now, so I've pressed the bind underneath, and you can see this is that, so that was the folded edge, and it's pressed so that it goes past the original row of stitching. I mean, here it's up to 2 millimeters, but that's fine as long as you've got a consistent width around the outside. It'll be good to go. So we're going to stitch this from the outside, and again we're stitching in the ditch, which means that we're putting it in the fabric just right next to the bind, not on top of the bind. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you had a couple of millimeters, you know, underneath here going past this, it wouldn't really be a problem, except that if it's a sheer fabric. Obviously the more you've got going past the bind, the more you're going to see through the fabric. Another option, of course, is to, if you are struggling a little bit at this stage, is to do it by hand. So where I'm stitching through, you could actually, you know, hand stitch this on the inside. That might be an easier option for the fabric you're dealing with. So again there, you can see it's in the ditch, and it really, I mean, it should get lost in the shadow, but it's a nice finish on the outside and a nice finish on the inside. It's our double French bind.